club takes pleasure in attracting a stellar list of speakers that address today's most relevant issues. The club's place as a refuge for rich discussion and networking has never wavered after 123 seasons.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Glenn Parkinson, and I'm an executive member of the Canadian Club Toronto. It's widely agreed that there's nothing more universally Canadian than hockey. And today, we're joined by some of this season's best-selling authors for an insightful conversation about the timeless social and cultural impact of hockey in Canada. But before we dive into today's topic, here's some information about how to participate with us. The click here to switch stream button helps if you find that your internet connection is slow. The video quality may decrease, but the audio quality should remain strong. Once you click on the Questions tab, you can enter questions for the panelists in the window and they will be sent directly to the moderator. The Request Help button, located in the bottom right of the page, is for technical support should you run into difficulty. Thank you to today's sponsors, Canadian Tire and Bauer. The Canadian Club is a nonprofit, and we've been gathering people together for 124 years, and it's because of our sponsors that we can continue to do that. We're grateful for your support of today's discussion. Now, to introduce today's speakers. Kirstie McLellan Day, one of the top hockey book writers in the world, with many, many titles, including Wayne Gretzky's 99 Stories of the Game, and Curtis Joseph's The Untold Story of My Life on and Off the Ice. Harnarayan Singh, co-host and play-by-play announcer, Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi, and author of One Game at a Time, My Journey from Small-Town Alberta to Hockey's Biggest Stage. And Rick Vaive, former captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs and author of Catch-22, My Battles in Hockey and Life. And we're fortunate to have today's expert panel moderated by Simpson, reporter from NHL on Sportsnet. One of the club's traditions that hasn't changed in this virtual world is that we toast to our country at the beginning of every event. And if you have a drink handy, please join me in a toast to Canada. And now, Kirstie, I'll turn the Canadian Club podium over to you.
Thank you so much, Glenn, for the introduction. And first of all, just thank you to the Canadian Club for inviting us all to be a part of this panel today to talk about one of my favorite topics, hockey. I want to just start by saying, hockey has been such a huge part of my life, both personally and professionally. It all began as a kid growing up in London, Ontario. I always say that if it weren't for the fact that I was the middle sister between two hockey-playing brothers, I guarantee you I would not be doing what I do today. So you can blame them. But for me, my love of hockey began as a little girl, not playing hockey, because really not a lot of little girls were playing hockey when I was growing up. But it was being dragged from rink to rink across Ontario, watching my brothers Dave and Craig play hockey, and of course watching Hockey Night in Canada with my family every Saturday night, never imagining that one day I would actually be a part of that show, because of course women weren't on Hockey Night in Canada then. But that is where my love affair with the sport began. So I would like to start by asking each of our panelists who are involved in the game in various capacities, where your love of hockey began. And Kirstie, I want to start with you. I mean, you've collaborated with some of the biggest names in the game to help tell their stories. Where did your love of hockey begin?
My love of hockey began with my kids. I have 5 kids, 4 boys and a girl. And our eldest was a goalie and just played kid hockey. And so we'd go to a few of the games, and then one of his brothers started playing, and his sister started playing. And they all had to be goalies because I was like, yeah, the equipment's in the garage. So they all were goalies, and our daughter ended up playing NCAA Div 1 hockey. And of course, that meant flying from Calgary to Maine, and then to New York, Schenectady, New York on the weekends. Quite a trip. And that's where my love began, and that was watching my kids play.
The quintessential Canadian hockey mom. I love it. You're the fabric of this country, that's for sure. Rick, before you were captain of the Maple Leafs, you were, like so many kids who grow up in this country, dreaming of being captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Where did your love of hockey begin?
Well, it all began in Ottawa, actually, on our outdoor rink in the backyard. And I don't know how my father accomplished it, but I think we lived in a 5-plex or 6-plex, and he somehow got all the other fathers to agree to use everybody's yards to build this big rink. And I mean, we spent like many hours every single day out on that rink. And it's kind of funny because the amount of hours that I spent out there in the minus 15 or minus 20 temperatures, never once did I ever complain or feel cold. And now I can't stand the cold. So anyway, it comes full circle, I guess.
Well, and Harnarayan, you're a colleague of mine. You've become a good friend. It's so good to see you. Your book, as it says, you came from small town Alberta to hockey's biggest stage. How did hockey influence you growing up in Brooks, Alberta?
Well, one of your brothers and one of his teammates had a lot to do it, and you can see the number 99 behind me. And growing up in Alberta in the 80s and the 90s, the Battle of Alberta was pretty strong, and there was a fellow named Wayne Gretzky. And my family, my sisters, who are all older than me, I'm the youngest in the family, and they were already hockey fans and big Gretzky fans. And so I grew up immersed in that atmosphere. My kind of obsession with hockey was unrivaled in that town of Brooks. And I was the only visible minority, but I was the only kid showing up at school wearing hockey jerseys. And, when Gretzky was traded to the Kings, it quickly switched, even though I was only 4 or 5 years old, to the Kings. And my hockey card collection and, obsessing over the facts and information on the backs of the hockey cards. And this microphone behind me, emulating people on TV like Ron McLean, who's become an amazing, person of guidance and a mentor for me. And the obsession to become a hockey broadcaster was so strong. And I played a ton of ball hockey. I actually didn't play ice hockey when I was a kid because my parents didn't skate. My family didn't skate. That wasn't something they were originally into. But the passion for hockey was just so strong. And I knew that this is what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Kirstie, you've been called really one of the world's most prolific hockey writers. You've collaborated with so many of the biggest names in the game, number 99 to mention just one. And so many of your books have gone on to be bestsellers. So I want to ask you, what do you think it is about hockey players and their stories that resonate so much with Canadians? Why do we care about them so much?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I like to think that I write books about the men set in hockey. It's not so much about the game as it is about the people. And I find that a lot of the men I write about, a lot of the players I write about have very strong family connections and women behind them. I often find as I'm writing their stories that they're a team not only with their teammates, but with their families, with their wives. And those stories and their parents are often very influential. So I think as Canadians, we're very interested in family and the game of hockey, of course. But when you put those two strong dynamics together, it creates a very powerful story.
Well, and actually on that topic, Rick, I know you talk a lot about your grandmother being really one of the heroes in your life. Talk a little bit about how she influenced you.
Well, I think she influenced me. I mean, not for hockey, so to speak, but as a person. She went through a lot of adversity throughout the years, and of course, 6 children, the youngest being my Uncle Frank, who was handicapped and blind from birth, and she had to look after him. And my grandfather was an alcoholic, and unfortunately sometimes was, gone for, days at a time. But, when I went and visited her, it never seemed like she had a bad day. It was like she just took it on and handled it very, very nicely. And she taught me a lot of really good life lessons, I think, and that was more important than anything else. And I just felt when I was there that I was in a situation where she was able to be able to handle anything that was thrown at her. And I wanted to be like her. I wanted to say, okay, I want to be able to do that. And she was a wonderful, wonderful person. And, I loved playing music, for putting records on for my uncle and singing with him and having fun. And those are, really, really fond memories for me.
And Harnarayan, I mean, while we're on the topic of family, your family is front and center throughout your entire book, obviously meant so much to you. And I've got to say, I felt like I learned so much about your family, traditions, your parents, and just the things that were important to them and how that instilled in you. I wonder if you could talk about your family and how they influenced you, and didn't say, are you crazy? This is your dream? What, are you kidding me? That's not possible.
Yeah, well, Christine, it's pretty fascinating. I've always admired how my parents were somehow able to maintain their faith, heritage, culture, language, even though they came here in the 60s to Southern Alberta as teachers. And that was a time when, people may not have even heard of a turban, let alone seeing one. And the adversity and challenges they went through in terms of things like racism, but things like, it was blatant, it was indirect, but it was also in terms of they came here with very little. They came here for an opportunity to try to provide for their families back home. And something like education meant so much more to them than the average person, because my mom, who was a principal in India too, of a girls' school, originally she had to go on a hunger strike just to convince her family and her grandfather to let her even get an education. And my dad is the second person from his small village in India to be able to get a post-secondary degree. And so they really valued these types of opportunities that they had when they came here. And in terms of support for me, and they've always been kind of a champion of my cause. Whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm into, my family drops everything to try to help and support. And I've seen that in so many different ways. And in terms of the obsession for hockey, yes, my dad being 7 post-secondary degrees, a PhD in math, and he used to write and create the grade 12 diploma exams in Alberta and Edmonton for how many years. He was worried about me creating my brain into this kind of encyclopedia of hockey. And so there was concern that, what are you going to do with this? And yeah, this is the dream, but they still did want to support, and they supported in so many different unique ways by, getting me this toy microphone, or saying, what, despite this being, a pretty impossible challenge, and I would have to go above and beyond to defy the odds, they said, give it a shot. And so that support, and the times that I doubted myself, or the times when people told me it wouldn't be possible, my family's always been there for support. I have to give a shout out to my sister Gurdeep, who's always been a rock, and my wife as well, who's it's really unbelievable to have that support from your family. And I can say to you literally, I wouldn't be where I am today without their support. I would have quit so long ago because of all of the challenges and obstacles that I faced in the early days.
Okay, so I do have to ask you as a follow-up, though, they must have been pretty darned impressed when they, like me a couple of weeks ago, saw you online having a chat with, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. Okay, that had to be pretty cool. I want to hear how that was for you, but I also want to ask you, one of the things that you said to our Prime Minister in your chat was, a story like mine, I believe, could only happen in Canada.
You know, it's so special, so unique. It really is something I'll never forget, to be asked by the Prime Minister's office and by Justin Trudeau to have a one-on-one chat with him. And when I reflect on my family's origins in Canada, my great-grandfather came in 1907. And when I grew up, having to justify my Canadianness, having people assume that I wasn't from Canada, and having to say, well, no, hold on a second, I'm born here, or having people come up even today and say, oh, wow, you don't have an accent. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm born here, I am Canadian. Like, and so when I reflected on my family's history with my great grandfather coming over 100 years ago, that during that time frame, Canada was not a welcoming place for people who were different. And the federal government, the prime ministers of that time, Mackenzie King, and we've heard all the names, and we focus on the good stuff, which is a good thing to do. But what they were saying from the parliament at that time is they wanted just a white Canada, and it wasn't welcoming for my great-grandfather. He didn't necessarily have the greatest experience here, spending almost a decade here doing various jobs, and he had to go back. And he decided to risk his life on a ship to go back to India. And when I think about where we were at that point in time in Canada to, you know, a couple of weeks ago, where a person like me who looks like me from that same lineage, who was asked to speak to the Prime Minister one-on-one for a good 10, 15 minutes, it's so special. And it meant so much to me, my family, but I would say the entire community. An incredible moment for sure.
Well, it was fun to watch, I've got to say, and I will encourage, and I'm starting to get questions in from our audience, and I will get to those momentarily and encourage more people to send them in. But Kirstie, I just want to go back to you too. When you think of, I mean, you delve into players' stories. I mean, yes, it's about their career, and we all know that there's lots of highlights that come with that. But there's a lot of dark moments too. And I think of, you know, your collaboration with the late Bob Probert, obviously Theo Fleury, for him to open up and to choose you to talk about in Playing with Fire, his story and everything that he went through. Even Curtis Joseph, who I covered with the Leafs and thought I knew pretty well. I mean, my eyes were opened about his upbringing. How does that process work? How do you get these players to be so comfortable to open up like they do to you? And do you feel it's almost therapeutic for them?
Well, as a journalist, you know, our job is to, you do it all the time, and that is to, you know, gain trust so that people know you won't exploit them or take the story in a direction they don't want you to take it. And I almost liken it to being an FBI profiler, and that is I really try to get inside the player's head if they allow me to. Often I'll embed. I stayed with Ron McLean and Carey. I was a guest of Danny Probert's during Bob's funeral. She was just, she's my hero. She was so courageous throughout. But sometimes with Curtis, we both lived in Scottsdale in the winter. Well, he lives there full time. And so we spent virtually every day together. And so I really try to get in their heads. Theron lives in Calgary. So again, we spent a ton of time together. And it gets to the point where I almost start beginning, I adopt their language in my head. And when I was writing Theron's story, I would be driving, you know, I'd be with my kids, and I started to use the F word a lot. My kids are like, Mom, take it easy, watch language. But it's something you do. I mean, you just start thinking like them. You start looking at the world through their lens. And if you can do that, if you can hear me in those books, then I think I failed. It's not about me. It's about what they think, their perception, how they look at the world. And if you can tap into that, then you're able to tell the story properly.
Well, and Rick, I mean, your story is absolutely about the amazing hockey career that you had, but you get really personal and in your book as well, and you open up about your struggles with anxiety and with alcohol. And you collaborated with a dear friend of mine in Scott Morrison in writing your book. Talk a little bit about that process and just what made you decide that this was the time in your life that you were ready to share.
Well, first of all, Scotty's an unbelievable individual, and I mean, I've known Scotty since the '80s when he covered us as a writer, and you know, recently I've gone to his golf tournament several times, and we just became kind of good friends, and I trusted Scotty 100%. I always said that he was the only guy I was going to write a book with if I ever did. You know, and everybody, I've had many people say, well, you know, how come you haven't written a book or anything? And I said, well, there's really, I'm not ready. And, you know, finally, I think right now I'm, you know, I've got a 16-month-old grandson, our first grandchild. I'm probably right now at the best possible moment in my entire life with my wife. And I mean, it'll be 40 years that we've been married in June. And I just felt that, you know what, now's the time. And also I wanted people to understand what I went through, and that maybe, you know, if they read it, that if they're having the same kind of problems, that they can get through them as well. That, you know, I don't want everybody to think that because I played in the NHL for 13 years that my life was perfect and after it was perfect and everything else. No, everybody has challenges and everybody has hurdles they have to get over, and my life was no different. So I was very fortunate that I was able to overcome those things and turn my life around, so to speak. And like I say, I'm at a place in my life where I don't think I've ever been happier.
And I wonder, have you had people reach out to you? Have you had former teammates reach out to you? What has been the reaction?
Yeah, there's been a lot of good reaction. A lot of good friends have, you know, texted me or called me and, you know, said, hey, I got your book. You know, it's really interesting. And I didn't realize that, you know, all this was happening while you were playing and after you were playing and all that. And these are people that I played with and hadn't seen for quite some time. The guys that I see all the time, I mean, they know all about it and everything else. But no, it's been exceptional. And then, of course, I got a lot of friends who bought books for other people, and they say, hey, is it okay if I drop by and get you to sign a few of these for some of my buddies? And so I got cars pulled up into my driveway almost constantly asking me to sign books, which is fine. I mean, you know, we're not out there doing it with everything that's going on. And so, you know what, if I got a good friend that has books that he's given out for Christmas presents, I'd be more than happy to sign them. And, you know, as long as it's done properly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, you talk about the impact your story can have. And for you, Harnarayan, I mean, the impact that you have had, not just on your community, but the community at large. I talked about watching Hockey Night in Canada and never imagining that one day me, this little girl in London, Ontario, could be on it. What about you? Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi, in your wildest dreams, did you think that that would even be an opportunity that would come to fruition, let alone you would be a part of it?
It's amazing, Christine, how you can find the parallels. Like, you know, you mentioned that you never saw women on TV. When I was growing up, I wasn't, you know, I didn't understand the world at that time. I was a Canadian kid who loved hockey, and this is what I wanted to do. But I learned as I went along that there likely might not have been a place for me because of how I looked, because of a lack of diversity on TV. And so even, having heard that so many times and along the path, even when I went to broadcast school. So just imagine this, you finally get the courage, you go to a post-secondary, to a broadcast university, and you're told even there that, you should think about producing behind the scenes that's more realistic for you. Or if you have a shot on the air, it's probably going to be news, but for sure not sports. And then you have something like this that almost felt like it dropped out of the sky, like a blessing. And to be in the right place at the right time, it was almost like fate, destiny, that my dream came true through Hockey Night Punjabi. And I got the phone call. I know you know Joel Darling. He's the guy who called me way back in 2008. And it was such a significant moment. I remember exactly where I was sitting. I know what the phone looked like. It was like one of these old looking beige phones without the caller ID and all that. It seems like it was eons ago, but that conversation, my jaw dropped. And I even wondered if it was like, is this real? Like, am I dreaming? How can this be happening? And then to be able to actually have the show in Punjabi, it's so special in the sense that it seemed like everything up until that point was preparing me for that moment. My parents putting in the extra effort and the extra miles to take me to classes to learn to be fluent in Punjabi, to read, or to know how to read, write, and speak it. And all of that and all of the hockey obsession all culminating in that moment. And then not knowing how impactful the show will be, that it will one day help grow the game at a grassroots level, that it will one day bring families together and be a nation building process where 3 generations have a new Saturday night tradition, just like families did in Canada in the 60s and when TV first started broadcast, when hockey was first broadcast on TV. And then what you just talked about, Chris, which is representation. I grew up being told that, no one looked like me on TV. Same with you. My kids who are 5 and 3, my daughter and my son, it's now normal for them to see women, people of color, to see hockey broadcast in different languages. And I'm so glad to see how much impact the show has had.
And Kirstie, we were talking about this before we started this panel a little bit about being women in an industry that, you've been a journalist, you've been a producer, obviously a writer of note. Talk a little bit about your personal path and along the way, those who helped you, and did you, how many walls did you have to break down to be what you are today?
Well, I'm sure my journey is similar to yours, Christine, in some ways. But before I do, I just wanted to say, listening to Rick and Harnarayan, I think to write a book, you have to have a lot of courage, and you can hear the courage that they are when they speak, that they are humble men, and that's what makes a good book, and that they have the courage to tell the truth. And you were asking before what makes a good book or a bestseller, and those are 2 of the main elements. And of course, both Rick and Harnarayan have those qualities. And that's why their books are so good. Yeah. My journey, it was basically, hockey mom, but I'm married to a wonderful man, a journalist, Larry Day, and we had a production company. We have one, which our son Buddy now runs, and made a ton of TV shows in Canada. And Larry was out, and I had always dabbled in writing, well, more than dabbled. I wrote a lot of television shows for A&E Biography in New York, and I would be on the press junkets and fly to New York and LA all the time. I'd often take the kids and interview movie stars. So I got very familiar and comfortable with it. And then Larry was golfing with Theron Fleury, and Theron said, yeah, I want to write a book. And Larry said, hey, my wife's a writer. And I had written a true crime book that was used at Mount Royal University in their criminology department about a really sad story about a woman, Liba Dolej, whose ex killed her 2 kids. And so that was a really intense journey with Liba, and just an amazing experience. But I wanted to get into writing more biographies. And so Theron gave me the opportunity, and that's what launched it all.
And then not only the book, but you're a playwright as well, because Playing with Fire ended up being a stage production. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It did. Again, our company, Pyramid Productions, made the documentary, Theron's Playing with Fire documentary, and it went on to win all kinds of things. My husband directed it and produced it. And then we did Clint Malarchuk's film. My two sons did that, Buddy and Jordy. And then Jordy just did Bob Probert's film. And so these books adapt very easily into other mediums. And because I'm very familiar with television, but I had never done a play. And I was approached by Alberta Theatre Projects, and they gave me a dramaturg and a really good director, Ron Jenkins, and we had a great star, Sean Smythe, and we adapted it, well, I adapted it, I guess, into a one-man play. And that play is toured all across Canada. In fact, it just closed at the Mayfield in Edmonton. It's been in virtually every city. And now Sean is working with me and Theron, and we're trying to reconstruct it so that it can play outside on a real hockey rink.
Oh my gosh, that would be something. Oh, yeah. Wow, very cool. So as I said, we're getting questions in from the people watching us. And so Rick, I had a question for you, but it's going to start with a question that just came in. Is being the captain of the Leafs like being president of the United States? Can take that a lot of places, but I was wanting to ask you about being captain of the Leafs, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was Harold Ballard, the then owner of the Leafs, I think, that came to you to say that you were going to be captain. You were just 22 years old. Can you just talk a little bit about that experience for you?
Well, I mean, I've talked to a lot of guys who were captains of teams, and they were sat down by management, usually the general manager, the coach, and maybe the owner, and were kind of asked, would you like to be our next captain? We think that we would like to have you as our next captain. Is that okay? Well, not in my case. It was just Harold Ballard just said, you're our captain. And I'm standing there and I'm 22 and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm really not ready for this yet. I might need another couple of years in the league before I could take that responsibility on. But then I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, but if I tell him no, he's going to trade me. And I had already been traded once, and I loved Toronto. I loved playing there. And I mean, yes, it was a great honor for him to say that to me. And you know, I was honored that I was, you know, he picked me to be the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But at the same time, it was a real difficult decision. But ultimately, it came down to the fact that I loved Toronto. I loved playing for the Leafs. I didn't want to leave, and I said yes. And, you know, fortunately for me, I had Boreas Salming sit right beside me in the room, and he backed me a lot of times. And then we got a little bit younger within about a year and a half. So that made it quite a bit easier as well. So, I mean, it wasn't always easy, but most days it was okay. And, but again, it was either take it at a young age and get through it, and I did, and I was more of a lead by example type guy anyway. I wasn't a guy to get up in the room and yell and scream and everything, and I was actually pretty quiet, but I wanted to do it on the ice and have people follow me.
Of course, the image I think many of us have that remember back in the days at Maple Leaf Gardens was Harold in his bunker there. And you tell a few pretty good Harold Ballard stories. Very different from MLSE and the corporate entity that it is now. It was a bit of the wild, wild west under Harold, was it not?
Well, it was more like Barnum and Bailey, the circus, to be honest with you. It was... boy, I mean, there was a lot of crazy stuff went on during the 80s when Harold was there, and probably even before that, before I got there in the 70s as well. But, I mean, it was crazy. It was like every day was like something new came up. And I think Harold's goal every day was to be on the front page of the sports of every newspaper in the area. And he pretty much accomplished that. And, you know, but I mean, for us, it was kind of like, okay, your job is to go out and play hockey and play to the best of your ability each and every day and every night that you're on Hockey Night in Canada or not on Hockey Night in Canada. And so you kind of had to put all that circus stuff aside and go out and do your job. It was hard, but if you're able to do that, then you could succeed in Toronto. And because believe me, it was crazy at that time. And the stuff that Harold would do, canceling our charters halfway through the year because the flight attendant wouldn't let him have a chocolate bar. I mean, to putting his dog in the team picture and right in front of him and I in the front row. Just the stories in the book about what happened to his dog too, which was pretty funny.
It is pretty funny. You'll have to, everybody, you'll have to go out and buy the book to hear it. Harnarayan, we've talked about some pretty incredible situations that you have found yourself in, one being interviewed by the Prime Minister. The other was when you were in the Stanley Cup parade with the Pittsburgh Penguins because of a pretty special call that to this day you are known for. Tell me a little bit about you and Nick Bonino.
Yeah, what an incredible bond that still, you know, brings such a big smile to my face. Nick and I have become good friends, and our kids are the same age. And, you know, it's really crazy because him and I, people who, you know, he's originally from the States and his wife's from St. Albert, Alberta, though. Who would have thought we would have this bond for the rest of our lives, the rest of our careers? And a small mistake in my notes, and I get into the detail in the book, but you know, the Coles Notes version is that left wing, center, and right wing. In my notes for that game, I accidentally wrote Bonino down in all three positions, and lo and behold, in 2016, he's playing for the Penguins. It was also a year, talking about Canada here, there was no Canadian teams in the playoffs in 2016, and a lot of us in the industry were quite worried about what was going to happen and how would that play out. Little did we know for Hockey Night Punjabi it would be, you know, the most kind of successful, iconic year ever in the history of the show. And so we're following Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins, but little did we know it wasn't about Crosby and Malkin. It was about this HBK line with Hagelin, Bonino, and Kessel. And Bonino ended up scoring some huge goals during those playoffs, and series winners, game winners, overtime winners, you name it. And that original game, so there's actually multiple Bonino calls. The hockey world as a whole knows about the Stanley Cup final one against the San Jose Sharks that went viral all around the world. But the Pittsburgh Penguins fans who follow the team really closely know that there were actually some Bonino calls similar before that. And there was such a cult following we had in Pittsburgh. We had no idea how big it was. But lo and behold, when he scored those big goals, the adrenaline was pumping. And as Rick told me too, he enjoys watching our enthusiastic style of calling games. And it just came out as Bonino, 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 Nick Bonino. And like, it was just, I didn't even know, like, it was not planned. It was that mistake. And it just somehow came out. And there you go. You know, as they got closer and closer to winning the cup, I started getting messages from the Penguins TV host, Selena Pompiani, and she's like, you have no idea how big you are out here. And I was like, really? And then there was so much media hoopla, and then all of a sudden they were a game or two from winning the Stanley Cup, and the Pittsburgh Penguins reached out and said, can you come down for the parade? And it was like a once in a lifetime opportunity, but they rolled out the red carpet for us. And the detail of meeting Mario Lemieux and him shaking my hand, but pulling me in for a hug and saying I'm a part of Penguins history, and surprising the players in the dressing room, what the coach, Mike Sullivan, said to us. And then being on that stage in front of 400,000 Pittsburgh Penguins fans, the Stanley Cup and the players are introduced, and boom, right after that, it's myself and my colleagues from Hockey Night Punjabi. And what a moment that really proved the power of sport, because if I look at it in the lens of 2020 and how we're looking at the world now with everything that's gone on this year, there wasn't much diversity at all in that parade of 400,000 people. Like, there would be no connection from someone like myself and all those fans had it not been for hockey. And so it really proved the power of sport. And to be, and you know, the other thing is we were in Pittsburgh for a number of days, staying in downtown, and we experienced nothing but love from people all over, you know, Pittsburgh and Penguins fans. And I would imagine if I would go there just randomly, you know, before the Bonino call, I might have had a different experience. So it was really unique, and it's something I'll never forget. It literally stands out like this vivid dream, and it's kind of like, wow, did that actually happen?
Yeah, how to go viral in 3 words, Bonino, Bonino, Bonino. But speaking of words, I found it fascinating reading as you described how you and your crew have had to actually come up with words when you're calling a hockey broadcast because they don't really exist in your language. Can you just talk a bit about the process that you've had to go through with that?
Yeah, there's so many hockey words, terminology out there that doesn't necessarily have a direct translation, cross-checking, slap shot, penalty box, and things like that. So over the years, with the creative juices flowing, and you know, we've really incorporated the characteristics of the Punjabi community. We're loud, we love our music, we love our food, we love to laugh. And I would say all 4 of those characteristics, you can find them in the call of a Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi game. And so when you're having fun and it's entertaining and you love the game, sometimes you have some gold that just comes out. And so my favorite one is penalty box, where we call it Saja da Dabba, and it translates back into English as box of punishment. So it's more dramatic. We add the spice and the masala, and the, you know, we include references to chai, and if a team had a bad period. So, you know, Rick Vaive, if the Leafs in the Harold Ballard era had a bad period, we would have said that, oh, they need to go have a cup of chai in the intermission so they can get going for the second. And so it's, you know, our he shoots, he scores is Maria shot, kita goal. Or I've even Rick Jenneret, the Buffalo Sabres iconic play-by-play guy, his going top shelf where grandma keeps the cookies. I've kind of made a hybrid of that with my mom's famous dish, which is vesen. And so we just have a lot of fun, and it's really cool to be able to bring in that creative element. I think it's one of the reasons why the show has really become more and more popular within the community.
Kirstie, I see you chuckling there, and you're someone who makes her living with words. I just want to get your reaction to that.
Oh, I'm just enjoying listening so much. What a wonderful, I didn't know that because Harnarayan's book is on my Christmas list. So is Rick. So that's what I've asked Santa for. But I love that he was using, and you know, that is part of hockey books. I'm sure Rick will agree as well. The unique language and the funny ways the dressing room, Ron McLean once told me, is the happiest place in the world. Maybe he can talk about that more. But some of the things guys come up with, and the expressions and the language, it's just so entertaining. I write these books and I literally laugh till I cry sometimes at some of the stories.
And Kirstie, I'm just going through again some of the questions that have come in. And Kirstie, I'll ask you, is there a moment in hockey history that you can say has truly moved you? And for us, it's not in playing, it's as being fans.
Oh, wow. That's a really good
question. I know, it's a good question.
A moment in hockey history that has really moved me. I'd have to think about that one.
All right. I can let you think about that.
Yeah.
Okay. We can definitely get back to you on that.
Yeah.
Rick, another question for you then. What has been the greatest moment in your hockey career?
I mean, obviously there's been some individual things that have happened that have been great. But I always look at it as I got the opportunity and I had the honor of playing in the best league in the world for 13 years. I can't think of anything better than that. I mean, yes, the first 50 goal was special, but just getting to play in the best league in the world for 13 years, growing up in PEI and dreaming about it as a young kid, and I got to do that. I was, honored to be able to do that. and humbled at the same time that I got to do that. Not very many young boys that dream of it get that opportunity, and I got it. And I feel very, very blessed and lucky that I was able to do that.
And you still hold the Leafs record for most goals in a season with 54. Now, we saw Austin Matthews. He looked like he was on pace to perhaps break it when the season was paused. I do want to ask you, I mean, hey, records are made to be broken. We hear Wayne Gretzky say that all the time, but just your thoughts. A, do you think that he will be the guy to break it? And how will you feel if and when that happens?
Well, first and foremost, I don't think anybody wants a record broken, but, it's going to happen at some point. It's just the way it is. Last year, he was getting pretty darn close. And would he have scored 8 goals in 12 games and break the record, or 7 and tie it? I don't know. But the fact, if he had gotten injured and missed 12 games or 8 of those 12 games and not done it, that would have been one thing. But for the virus, the pandemic, to take that away from him, I felt bad for the young man. I really did. You don't get that opportunity very often, and he was right there, and that was swept right from underneath him by the pandemic, and I felt bad for him. So, I would think that, and of course it probably won't be this year because it'll be a 56 game season or thereabouts, but I would imagine once they get back to the 82 game schedule, I can't see anybody else in Toronto doing it other than Matthews. He's got an incredible shot. He's a great player, but the way he's able to score goals is amazing. And I'm pretty sure he'll get there at some point.
Harnarayan, I'll put the question that I put to Kirstie to you too. Is there a moment in hockey history that you say has truly moved you?
There's so many. And, the first one that came to mind is because when I was growing up and the Oilers, your brother Craig Simpson and Wayne Gretzky and Yeri Curry and them were winning all of their Stanley Cups. And when 1988, Wayne Gretzky, when he got traded, and that moment of him where, Messi had told him not to cry, and then all of a sudden he has the Kleenex, and just what it meant as a hockey fan who was so obsessed with it, and just that was pretty tough to take. I remember, and I write about it in the book, Peter Pocklington with the ownership there at that time, with us kids, my sister Gurdeep and I, not totally understanding how the world works. We went up to Mom right away and said, please, we don't want any Beatrice products at home at all anymore from this day on. And Peter Pocklington obviously owned that dairy company, Beatrice. And it was just that you can still picture that moment in your mind. But I've got so many moments. There's a whole chapter called Wayne's World in there. And I remember at a charity golf tournament that Wayne Gretzky had after he retired, and my sister and I were there as fans, and quiet moment when he was just sitting in a golf cart, and I started babbling and rambling on just like I do now, and I started talking, and he started listening, and there's a crowd of like 200-300 people, and security's like, what's going on? And I remember I just went through the security line, and they started coming towards my sister and I, and Gretzky told them to stay back, and he allowed us to come, and my sister and I had this amazing conversation with him. He offered to autograph our jersey, and the year after we even had a picture with Gretzky sitting while he's in a golf cart, my sister and I, super fans. And the year after, we had that picture out with us, and he recognized us and offered to sign the picture again. And it's just those types of moments that really shows he was better than advertised in terms of how he is as a person. I remember my parents always teaching me about the Sikh community and their scriptures talking about abandoning your ego and being a humble person. And it was so cool to meet your kind of hockey idol and see that he was exhibiting some of those characteristics that I was learning at home were about being a good person. And so it helped attract me towards not only him as a hockey player, but who he was. And so those are some of those significant moments. There's so many more. I could go on and on, but I would end up taking up the entire time. So I'm going to stop now.
Those are some good ones, though. I'll give you that. Kirstie, you've had some time. Do tell.
I have. So, yeah, that's the thing about Wayne Gretzky, isn't it, Harnarayan? That when you speak with him, I'm sure you know this too, Rick and Christine. He makes you feel like you're the most important person in the world. He just has this unique quality, and he's so generous of spirit that he's the real deal. Just a great guy. But yeah, and I had actually thought of this when writing the book with Wayne. I did have a chance to talk with Willie O'Ree, who wasn't able to join us today, but he told me a story that I think really did affect me. And that was when Lynn Patrick invited him, and I'm just referring to my book, in 1957 to join the Bruins. He got the letter, and he was the first player of color in the league. And so he's playing for the Bruins, and once he got into the league, there was a lot of name calling, and because there were no other players of color. And so he told me that Eric Nestorenko, who was a winger with the Blackhawks and finished his career with over 1,000 penalties, was making racial comments and just wouldn't leave Willie alone. And Willie was at the time blind in one eye. Nobody knew that. But he wasn't a fighter. He was just a really strong player. And during warm-up, this guy was skating over and really giving him trouble. And 7 minutes in, Nestorenko butt-ended him in the mouth, broke his nose, split his lip, and knocked out his 2 front teeth, and then stood over him, calling him terrible words. But that wasn't what set Willie off. What set him off was Nestorenko was laughing at him. You're not going to do anything about this. And O'Ree thought, okay, either I do something now or I'm going to be chased around for the rest of my career. And he got up and clubbed Nestorenko over the head with his stick. Nestorenko needed 15 stitches, and Willie's career was on its path. And that really, that affected me. And I think about that story often. And I think it's a great moment in hockey that he overcame racism by standing up for himself and just not taking it anymore.
Yeah, a wonderful man. I am sorry that he couldn't join us. I've been lucky enough to interview him a number of times. His book is amazing, and if you get a chance to see his documentary, Willie, it also is just an eye-opening tale of everything that he went through and everything he continues to do today with the National Hockey League, making sure that hockey is indeed for everyone, because we've come a long way, but we still have a ways to go. I'm going to wrap up by asking each of you just a final question. And Kirstie, for you, I just want to know, is there another book in your life? Is there a story that you want to write that you haven't yet? Or I don't know if you can share with us if you do, or what is next for you?
Oh my gosh. I get I'm approached a lot, and I approach a lot of people, and there are 100 stories I want to write. And I'm on the path, talking to a lot of people and looking at different stories. And there'll be lots more books in my career. How about you? How come you aren't writing books? You're a wonderful journalist.
Oh, well, you guys you've inspired me all today. Okay,
I'm looking forward to your book.
I might have to think about that. Rick, I know you're busy, not only with your family, your grandchild getting ready for Christmas, but what's ahead for you? And I guess I'd also like to know, with hockey hopefully coming back mid-January and with an all-Canadian division, what are you most looking forward to, even just as hockey fans watching that?
Well, I mean, if it's an all-Canadian division, man, that's going to be pretty cool. I think it's going to be extremely exciting. You have so many. You got the Battle of Alberta, you got Toronto and Ottawa. It's all going to kind of come together, though, and then there's going to be a lot more battles within Canada. I think it could be just sensational, and I'd actually love to see them keep it that way for good. I think it'd be good for the game. to be quite honest with you. And I'm just looking forward to watching hockey again and not documentaries and everything else is what I'm doing now.
I hear you. Harnarayan, I know you and I are both getting ready to get back to work. What are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, there's obviously going to be a lot of intrigue this season, a lot of different storylines in terms of how it all plays out with the pandemic and, you know, the vaccines and all that kind of stuff. But the Canadian division, as Rick mentioned, the rivalries will be definitely interesting to see. I think it's interesting, some of the player turnover. I know out here in the West, they're joking that it's the Calgary Canucks because of Markstrom, Tanev, and Josh Levo and Louis Domingue, and 4 players from the Canucks, if I'm not mistaken, that have moved over to the Flames. Kind of some fun storylines there. But yeah, I'm looking just forward to getting back to the normalcy of how it's so weird that we're in the middle of winter here and we don't have hockey on. So some normalcy with the season coming back on will be much appreciated.
I think that's one thing we can all agree on. I just want to say thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. I could do it anytime with the three of you. Thank you for giving your time, and thank you for your contributions for hockey fans out there. There's some great books that should be on your Christmas wish list if there aren't already. So thank you again to each of you, and I will send it back to Glenn.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Thanks, thanks, Christine, and thank you to everyone for engaging with us online today. Kirstie, Harnarayan, and Rick, thank you for joining and providing such a wonderful and personal glimpse of your stories and experiences in the game. I really appreciated your openness. And Christine, thank you again for your expert guidance of today's discussion. That was our final event of the year before we break for the holidays, but we hope to see you again in the new year. In fact, join us on Tuesday, December 5th for our 44th annual Outlook to hear from our experts about what's in store for the economy, markets, politics, and more in the year ahead. In a year where nothing has been predictable, Outlook 2021 looks for predictions that we can make. Thank you again to Canadian Tire and Bauer for sponsoring today's event. Our events would not be possible without our sponsors, so we thank you for your continued generosity. And thanks to our AV supplier, Van Valkenburg Communications, and livemeeting.ca for making it possible for us to come together virtually today. And to all of our guests, thank you for joining us. Please stay healthy and safe, and have a joyous holiday season.